Okay, let's jump straight into this explainer of what is just a genuinely fascinating piece of source material. Now, we know that in reality, Sigmund Freud's late life was marked by his painful battle with jaw cancer and eventually fleeing to London to escape the Nazis. But today, we're looking at a fictional late-in-life manuscript attributed to the founder of psychoanalysis. In this beautifully crafted imagined text titled On the Living and the Dead, we find a version of Freud radically revising his entire life's work. It's a text that completely forces us to look differently at psychology, healing, and honestly, what it really means to be human.
Right out of the gate, we're hit with this incredible, raw vulnerability. We are watching a genius, a man who spent his entire life authoritatively analyzing the deep, hidden motives of everyone else, finally turn that incredibly sharp lens back on himself. He admits to the strange reality of his profession, being a physician who diagnoses others while being totally unable to clearly see his own symptoms. It sets the absolute perfect stage for a massive confession.
And this confession forces a complete paradigm shift. The author admits that the rigid, binary oppositions of the 19th century, these forces fighting each other, like Eros versus Thanatos, or the conscious versus the unconscious, well, they organized his vision in ways he didn't even realize. He thought they were warring combatants, but his final revision reveals something totally mind-bending. They aren't opposing forces at all. Actually, they are the exact same process. We're just viewing them from different distances.
Section 1. Redefining the death drive from vector to vibration.
To really grasp this, we have to look at how he completely rethinks one of psychology's greatest mysteries. Why do we compulsively repeat our past pain? Why on earth do we actively recreate the conditions of our original suffering? In his old theory, he viewed this repetition as a vector, basically like a river flowing backward toward its source, an organism driven toward dissolution and death. But here, he totally replaces that linear river with a vibrating string. We aren't driven toward death at all. Rather, we're vibrating. We are sustaining a frequency, constantly pressing against the boundary of the self, testing it from the inside and the outside simultaneously.
So think about it. You know that time you repeated a painful mistake in a relationship? And don't worry, I'm not asking you to text your ex right now. But according to this text, what were you actually looking for in that moment? You weren't seeking destruction. You were desperately seeking recognition. You were just trying to make genuine contact along your boundaries with an other, someone who could firmly hold their ground and actually handle your true self. And this clumsy search for recognition leads to what the text calls analytic consciousness. It's this state of heightened awareness where your mind holds conscious intent and unconscious drives at the exact same time, without them fighting. And this state of awareness is exactly what our painful repetitions are trying to achieve. We repeat the trauma trying to finally be present to our own pattern, to experience it and observe it at the exact same time. Section 2. The Resonant Chamber, Rethinking the Analyst.
Which brings us to a really radical rethinking of how human beings actually help each other heal. Because if the goal is recognition and genuine contact, the therapist cannot play the traditional blank mirror. The author confesses that playing the mirror actually refuses genuine human contact because, well, a mirror has no interior, right? It only reflects the surface. Instead, he proposes the analyst absolutely must be a resonant chamber. This means bringing your own interior depth to the encounter, deeply receiving the other person's pain, carrying it, and returning it transformed.
So this completely redefines healing entirely. It isn't a clever interpretation handed down from an expert on high. It is mutual depth. It's two people illuminating a dark cave together. The ultimate therapeutic action isn't a diagnosis. It's the profound shared experience of being totally, genuinely real to another person. Section 3. The Group Unconscious, What the Horde Knows. When we scale this whole thing up from the individual to society, we encounter the shared interior object. Families and nations are bound together not just by shared beliefs or conscious goals, but by shared repressions, unspoken guilts, and completely unacknowledged traumas. These exist across multiple minds simultaneously, forming the true foundational bedrock of group psychology. Because just like an individual repeats their trauma, societies do it too. This traces how early 20th century Europe cyclically repeated its unacknowledged trauma. From the sudden eruption of World War I, to the collective denial of veterans' trauma, right into the rise of a demagogue who exploited that exact unhealed wound for power, straight into the devastating repetition of 1939. Unhealed societal wounds inevitably return as catastrophe. Section 4. Myths as Maps, Navigating the Depths. So, if we are all carrying around this immense psychological depth,
how on earth do we navigate it without being completely destroyed? Well, for most of human history, we used maps, and those maps were our myths. The author points out that modern society proudly dismantled these ancient myths in the name of rational science. And sure, while that gave us an exhaustive, brilliant knowledge of the physical surface of the world, like, how to cure diseases or invent the smartphone, it left us totally and completely disoriented in the psychological deep. We lost our orientation to our own inner lives, causing those archetypes to erupt literally and destructively. To survive without those cultural myths, we desperately need something he calls depth perception. This is a critical, often pre-verbal capacity that parents transmit to their children. It's that vital, unspoken, atmospheric lesson we pass down that basically says, your inner life is real, it has layers, and it is absolutely safe to feel them.
Section 5. The Net and the Sea, a Genius's Final Realization.
We reach the emotional climax here, where the author turns a breathtakingly honest light on himself and the sheer human cost of his genius. He admits with just stunning vulnerability that his rigid, brilliant theories were actually a massive defense mechanism. They were constructed to protect himself from the unmanageable, terrifying reality of raw human intimacy. His obsessive need to scientifically explain everything was basically a shield to keep him from simply having to be with the pain of others.
He realizes his entire life's work was ultimately just a net. A finely woven, incredible net, sure. Our analytical frameworks and our theories are incredibly useful for catching and organizing information, but they can never, ever fully capture the vast, uncontrollable, irreducible sea of the raw human experience. It's just too big.
And in his final hours, he actually finds a profound peace in the realization that self-knowledge is permanently incomplete. The total inability to explain everything with science and psychology is not a failure of the intellect. It's a beautiful, generative truth about how vast and mysterious life actually is.
Which brings us to a deeply emotional question that he poses to us all. What remains when the theory sleeps? Think about that. What is actually left of us when we finally strip away our desperate need to explain, to intellectualize, and to control everything around us? The ultimate realization seems to be exactly this. True love and genuine healing require us to drop our intellectual armor. We must tolerate the terrifying unknown and simply be present with one another. To sit in the resonant chamber together and just hold the space for what cannot be categorized. I'm going to leave you with this final, lingering thought to ponder as you navigate your own life. When you strip away your defenses and your certainties, you are left to venture bravely into your own depths. Do so with whatever small lamp you have, because that dark interior is not empty. It's where life actually happens.